Let's kick it off with new acts of gun violence leading to children being shot. On Thursday night, gunfire erupted outside the Capitol Venera Apartments on Hank Aaron Drive. This was in southeast Atlanta. 4 young people ranging in age from 12 to 18 were all shot in the legs. Atlanta police say they were taken to Grady, but were expected to recover as investigators search for suspects. Meanwhile, in South Fulton, a 1-year-old was caught in the crossfire. Also on Thursday, at the Gardens at Camp Creek Apartments here, that toddler was shot in the leg and was rushed to the hospital. Authorities say the child's condition was stabilized and 2 people were detained as that investigation continues. And then just yesterday afternoon, the GBI reported it was investigating a shooting in Monroe County where a 3-year-old was critically wounded as a result of playing with a firearm. Now, these gun incidents involving children are once again raising some real tough questions about safety, both in our communities and in our homes. For more of a deep dive here, let's bring in Dr. Thaddeus Johnson, an assistant professor in Georgia State's Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology. So tell us, how do these 3 cases, all very different, right? But they illustrate both the scale and the randomness of youth exposure to gunfire.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really goes to show that, we need to really think about access to those people who, including youth, who should not have access to firearms. It starts there. It's some other aspects. We know that with putting guns in the hands of juveniles, there are issues developmentally as well. There's conflict issues that perhaps they may not be emotionally or mature enough to deal with. So it can be a really ugly situation. And particularly, it's so tragic, any of them, but particularly when you have kids killed in the home that a firearm is at, or someone has access to an unlocked firearm, that makes it even more devastating.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, regardless of how you feel about the Second Amendment and, operating and adhering to your Second Amendment rights. When you add a firearm in the house, I think that just really kind of raises the bar here. So how does the presence of firearms in households, whether secure or unsecured, increase the risk for very young children? We're talking 1- and 3-year-old victims here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do know that particularly if there's unsecured assets in the home, that the chances of the child, the teenager, an adult, a family member being hurt goes up exponentially. Unfortunately, unlike many other states, Georgia doesn't have a law where you have to have a locking device inside your home. We know that when you have those types of laws in those states, it shows that outcomes are much better. You reduce the risk of not only intentional, but particularly unintentional firearm death as well. And it's a really difficult conversation because you can protect your home according to the Second Amendment, but also we need to make sure we protect our family members who we intend to protect. And oftentimes we know that some people don't get gun control training. They don't get good training. It's not required for them to understand how to lock up their devices and things. And so we got to do a better job of being responsible gun owners, and also do a better job of making sure that gun owners have the resources that they need, often also backed by law.
I want to take a little piece out of the equation and really hone in on this portion of the conversation. Let's talk about systemic issues. Housing instability, poverty, or access to guns are most likely directly linked to kids being caught in shootings like we saw in Atlanta and Monroe County. Do you see those 2 things really kind of coming together?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing we need to think about, we know when we're talking about gun violence, particularly among youth, the use of their African-American men, not only as the offenders, but also those who are often the ones, the victims, and not talking about those who are caught up in the gunfire. We also know that many times in these communities that I'm talking about, guns are carried for protection. It's not that they're going out to be hunters. They are afraid. And so you have afraid people who have these issues, who are not developed fully as adults. That can be a signs for real tragedy. And we also know that when it comes to gun violence, and particularly, we know that it has to do with systemic issues. We know that there are things in the community that we can do. We know that it's not just an issue that we can police our way out of. And so absolutely, there are some systemic aspects around. We know who are often the victims, particularly when it comes to these incidents, particularly when you're talking about youth and young Black men ages 15 to 19. It can take it even farther to 34. But yes, absolutely, there's systemic aspects, economic aspects around it, educational aspects around it. But at the end of the day, it does not cause us to elude or escape personal accountability. And so there's also those accountability aspects in place that we as a society, whether the justice system or families, right, or social services, can make sure to try to fill in the gap.
And for parents who are watching today, tell us what's the very first step that they can take at home to reduce the chance of their child ever getting caught up in gun violence?
Hold yourselves accountable. That's a really great question. Hold yourselves accountable and know the responsibility. Understand the power of having a firearm. And if you're also just, thinking about you having sleepovers and things like that, if you're sending your kids to someone's home, have a conversation with their parent. Is there a firearm there? And if there's a firearm there, are you protecting it safely? Are you keeping the ammunition and things separate from the actual firearm and things like that? Where is it at? Will the kids be around it? So you also want to make sure where your kids are at, not only in your home, but in your community where they may be, that everyone is practicing good gun safety. And if they're not, then I think you want to make sure your child is not in that environment. Make sure you check your child's friends. Understand what's going on in your child's life. That to make sure they're not being bullied. Make sure there's things are not going on where they're afraid. Just make sure that they are good, because when we have that lapse, that's when you start to see the access to guns. So it's more than just physical locks. It's also having emotional and mental bonds with these children as well.
All right, Dr. Thaddeus Johnson, thank you so much for your expertise and your insight. Great tips there. And we'll see you back again here on The Take soon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you all.